Um, Welcome to the 716 Sports Blizzard podcast. And today my guest is Nick Small from the Argo Bounce Audio Cast.
Hi, Robbie, and hello, everybody who's tuned in. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Um, what was your thoughts on the game on Saturday for the Toronto Argonauts?
Oh, it's a great question. They managed to pull away with the win. They had a little bit of good luck, fate of good fortune. There was an individual who was a longtime radio commentator for the Toronto Argonauts. He played linebacker back in the 60s, 70s, I believe, and did radio commentary for 20 years with the team. It was the president of um, the Alumni Association. Pete Martin, he passed away recently, so a lot of people like to think that this win was his ghost shining down on the team, because it was not necessarily one of their best games on the offensive side of the field, but they did manage to pull away with the win against Winnipeg, who could have snuck up on them in a little bit of a trap game, as some might say. They pulled away with an overtime win to win 16-14.
Yeah, that game seemed like it was gonna be low scoring because the two defenses were playing good football.
Yeah, Winnipeg really managed to shut down almost anything from Toronto's passing game. We saw them make a quarterback change halfway through where Cameron Duke started the game, and then I think he lasted only about one quarter, and then Nick Arbuckle came in, and unfortunately, passing wise, neither was really able to move the ball. Uh, Kadeem Carey was still able to get some good carries through, but on the flip side, with Winnipeg, they were able to move the ball, but it was just a lot of costly mistakes. There were a couple fumbles. Zach Caleros got sacked quite a few times. And then there was that kind of weird instance there at the end of the game where the Argos had a drive on a 3rd and 1 and they weren't able to convert. And then vice versa, Winnipeg had a drive back and they weren't able to convert on the 3rd and 1 either. So the story of the game really was a lot of struggling offensive plays and while the Argonauts really were never able to get anything sustained for a very long period, Winnipeg's problem was that they just coughed up the ball, turned it over at the most inopportune times, which allowed Toronto to stay in the game right till the overtime.
Do you think that like Toronto's quarterback um
Chad Kelly, or are you
yeah,
thinking, yeah,
do you think he'll be playing or is he still
yeah, I expect so. He's got the way that the ruling of his suspension was given by the league, it was a minimum of 9 games with the conditions that he had to go through a bunch of classes and ethics training and that sort of thing, um, as a part of it in order to be reinstated by the league. From what we understand through news media and what those who have better knowledge of it than I do have reported on it, he's done all the courses that he's been instructed to, like up to this point. He's attended every class he's required and all of that stuff. What we saw at the very beginning of the season when training camp opened, Chad Kelly had reported to training camp and was ready to practice even amidst the suspension. And then it came down from mostly from fan criticism. That was when they decided to remove him from camp. And at this point, it seems like there's a little bit of a gray area where the main thing is the Argonauts organization want to make sure that the league has clarified and knows that he's allowed to return, whereas Um, they just don't want to rush him into being taking practice reps, and then suddenly somebody says, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that," and then his suspension's increased. So the team has to play it very carefully at that. Then on the flip side, um, the challenge too comes with that. You don't want to leave him too long waiting to come back in, because although he's done a tremendous amount of practice, it's not like he's just sat on his TV and watched games and played the college football EA sports game all season so far. He's practiced and is ready to go back into play right away, but he probably needs at least a week getting some reps with the wide receivers in full game speed in order for that to happen.
And there's Chris in the comments saying the CFL is being silent about the Chad Kelly return.
Yeah, that's what's so tricky about the situation. It's what really sets us apart from other issues where we've seen things like we've seen individuals like Eric Tillman, for instance, who is in a lot bigger deal of scandal than Chad Kelly should be for what he did. Um, just the one I can think of off the top of my head, but there's others. There's convicted felons who are playing in both the CFL and the NFL, whereas Chad Kelly's thing is barely a civil lawsuit. But the thing with it is that he's not just any player. He came in as the defending most outstanding player, highest paid player, and was supposed to be one of the major marketing guys for both the CFL and the Argonauts, in the same way that Nathan Rourke probably would still be in BC if he hadn't chose to continue to pursue play in the NFL. So it then becomes a challenge where, and we see this particularly with the Argonauts, because a lot of what was the money that they would have originally put in their marketing has now been derailed, and they have to now put it through other means. And not to mention just the negative publicity of itself leads to some fans feeling alienated from it, which is too bad, because in a league where each team comprises of 45 individuals plus your practice roster, it's not really fair to the team that people make their decision off one player. But it is enough where it goes against a culture right now where we're really trying to prove that football is a game for everyone. And unfortunately, these allegations sort of, if the discipline is not equivalent to the to what he's being accused of, it doesn't reflect well on the CFL or the organization for upholding that standard on gender diversity and equity and all that stuff. So that's kind of the 2 minute speed version of all the problems that this has all sort of accumulated into.
Chris comes in and says almost a year without playing is huge. Going to take time for Kelly to get rust off of him.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it does, because we've seen guys who haven't started in several weeks off the injury list, and I think what you saw by Ryan Dinwiddie's response on TSN 1050 a couple days ago, his response was the same thing. You treat it like anybody's coming off an injury. Like Jake Ceresna's shoulder is still not perfect, and he was a beast there last week against Winnipeg. So it he's not just any guy. He's supposed to be the star quarterback of the entire league. So if there's anybody who's got that capability to come back in and go guns a blazing, it probably would be Chad Kelly. And as I mentioned earlier, the bar on our show, the bar is pretty low, with given the way that Cam Dukes and Nick Arbuckle have performed over the last couple of games. It's not like the team is 6-1 and they're throwing for 450 yards a game. They were barely able to muster over 100 yards the last game against Winnipeg. So, and they weren't much better the week before, and in the loss against Hamilton. So it's not like he's coming in and there's questions on, like at the very beginning of the year when they beat BC one game in, or he's thinking, oh, if this keeps up, we don't need Chad Kelly. Well, now the the playbook's been kind of figured out by opposing defenses, and they're not able to move the ball down the field as effectively as they've been earlier in the year. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and I think the full expectation is Chad Kelly probably with the last week, if the CFL allows it, he'll start attending full practices again, and then probably the first week he's eligible to play again. I fully expect him to be starting quarterback.
Who is the main running back for the Argonauts?
That, sir, would be Mr. Kadeem Carey. He's played for Calgary his entire career, I believe, before he came to the Argonauts in the offseason this past year. His numbers weren't great last year. He dealt with a couple of injuries, which kept him sidelined for a good chunk of the season. But then the year before that, though, he was one of the league leaders in some of the major rush statistics, and I think he was probably, if I remember correctly, uh, the highest rated running back in the league, winning the most outstanding running back awards from the CFL for his performance. So it's not like a lot of criticism the team got last year was that they let go a fan favorite running back in AJ Olette, but they've been able to fill that spot since with a pretty stellar performance from Kadeem Carey so far. And the Argonauts have really leaned on him, especially as the passing play of the team has not been quite up to the standards many have hoped. He's been the one guy that's been able to really break some huge yardage, and I might even argue his speed is probably better than the sheer power that Olette had.
Um, do you think that the Argonauts will like lean more on their run game instead of their pass game?
That's a good question. It'll be interesting to see what they do this week against Calgary, um, because Calgary, I they're still a good defensive team, but I think what poses some challenges, of course, is it is Kadeem Carey against his former team, so he's gonna want something to prove in this, kind of like when Brady Oliveira has proven things against teams like Toronto or even last week, this game yesterday, sorry, against BC. Um, Chris on our show sure believes that they're going to run to Kadeem Carey more. My only worry with that is if they keep running to Kadeem Carey, it is proving that they're becoming a little bit one dimensional, I think. And I think what's really been the big challenge of the Argonauts so far this year is they haven't really been able to throw the ball for any substance. I don't think since week one they've even thrown one quarterback has thrown the one receiver for more than 100 yards. So I think if they keep running to Kadeem Carey a bit too much, I think last week I think he took around 16 carries and was targeted for another 6 or something like that. And out of 120 plays in a game, that's just under a quarter of plays, and break it into offensive plays, that's probably just under 45%. So if you do it too much, it's becoming pretty obvious who you need to target on defense to stop. And then you can, if you're playing defense, then you play your defensive backs up. You run a more aggressive coverage like a cover one instead of a zone coverage like a cover three, and you worry less about the guys further downfield and focus on someone like Kadeem Carey. That's kind of my concern coming into this week, that especially with somebody like Micah Alway, who's a really good middle linebacker, in the same way that Adam Bighill was for Winnipeg, being able to shut them down. That's the kind of thing I expect Calgary to run this week, especially if Toronto fails early on to establish any sort of middle to deep passing.
Um, do you have any like NFL questions to ask me before we add Chris into the call?
Yeah, we talked a little bit, just picking some ideas off each other to talk about. I know I mentioned my jerseys earlier. I've got a whole bunch strung up. You were talking to me a little bit about what jerseys you have in your collection. Do you want to tell everybody about them?
Um, well, I have a Josh Allen jersey. Um,
Nice.
the road jerseys for the Bills, and then I have the red color rush jersey with Damar Hamlin on the back.
Yeah, and I don't follow the NFL nearly as much as other people are. I tend to be a big CFL guy or that, but he was the player who had the cardiac arrest before or in the middle of one of the games there a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah. It was against Cincinnati. It was Buffalo versus Cincinnati, and it was in Cincinnati when it happened.
Yeah, a pretty scary thing, and I think it shows among other injuries that how dangerous sometimes the occupation of football can be for some of us armchair casual observers, and that being you don't realize the kind of intense stress that they put their bodies through week after week in the field of play. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for him to not only, of course, recover, but also for him to be able to be back into playing professional football again. So that's really cool that you have a jersey of him. How do you think the Bills are going to do this year? Now, as we're getting close to preseason, I believe it's starting next week, right?
Yeah, the Bills play the Bears for the first preseason game next Saturday. And it's a 1 o'clock start for the Bills. Um, and I see Chris is in the waiting room down there in the bottom.
Are they playing in Buffalo, or is there a chance you're going to go to that game this week or next week?
It is in Buffalo, but I probably won't be at the game. But
Uh,
I'll be watching on TV. So
yeah, one of my goals this year is I want to get a little bit more into watching some American football, particularly with more with the college football to try to do a little bit more of the kind of scouting things. In Canada, we have our own U Sports League, which has a lot of players, of course, that are up in the CFL draft every year, and there's a lot of good universities here, especially in Southern Ontario. Western in London's a really popular and top team. Um, the Laurier Golden Hawks is my alma mater, which is arguably the other top team competing for it. There's Queen's University in Kingston. There's McMaster, U of T. So there's a lot of really good schools here just in the Ontario University Association. So um, yeah, and of course they play. There's also leagues out west, and there's leagues in the Quebec and Maritime region. So, but I also want to take a look and try to understand the college football system a little better, the Big Ten and all that stuff, because there's a lot more Canadians that are trying to break their way through into the U.S. colleges as well. And all of them tend to do get drafted anyways through the CFL draft because it's the CFL draft is really weird because it's exclusively Canadian players that get drafted. So apologies for the rambling, but that's all the kind of stuff I'm really interested to talk about.
um, before I bring Chris on the show, what did you think of the new kickoff in the NFL?
Oh yeah, that is a good question. I personally think that the NFL rule changes for all the kickoffs is a little needlessly unnecessary. I didn't like when they changed the whole kickoff format anyways because so much of it just led to touchbacks anyways in order to remove uh, to remove the the contact that was leading to injuries. But at the same point, a lot of the statistics is how you present it. And one of the big criticisms we see a lot is something along the lines of only 10% of the plays are kickoffs, yet 15 or 20% of the injuries happen on special teams. But you flip that on its head, the 80% of injuries happen on 90% of the non-kickoff plays. So general line of scrimmage contact, um, uh, cut blocks on wide receivers, on linebackers that aren't expecting it, things like that that have nothing to do with special teams. So you're too focused on the discrepancy at the micro level and you're not looking at the macro. If you really want to take injuries out of football, it comes with removing the offensive line play at the line of scrimmage because that's what's causing the concussions and the CTE, which are the majority of long-term injuries as a result of football. Tackling the I mean, yeah, unfortunately, you do get some of the more gruesome injuries because of the high speeds of contact on special teams play, but that's not where the majority of injuries are coming from. And if anything, I think they really should look towards the CFL and how some of their rules, particularly the no yards on punting plays, help mitigate some of that by forcing players to slow down and stop contact before hammering into the blockers or the ball carrier at high speeds. We've already eliminated the wall blocking concept where you get three or four linemen to kind of link arms and form kind of a big human shield and plow their way through. Doing things like that are probably more proactive at fixing the game than trying to come up with a completely new kickoff format. And then the overtime thing is just stupid in the sense that now the one key thing, the element of surprise on a special teams play, is now completely out the window if you have to declare it among having to be a losing team in the game and all that stuff. So it's just ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, I like kicking it out of the end zone. I didn't like that either. And bringing it out to the 25. Um, like I
Yeah,
think
that too. So sorry,
I
go ahead.
think that rule was just not.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me when I don't know if it was like this for you as a kid growing up in Buffalo, but we played a lot of football, like just kind of backyard football during recess and stuff, where we had our own chunk of the playground that we used as our make believe BMO field or Bill Stadium or whatever. And one of the things I found that was annoying whenever we opened with special teams play, a guy would catch the ball in the field of play and then run in the back of the end zone and be a touchback when in football rules before then that would be a safety. So to me it's giving me like, yeah, that sort of like 10-year-old backyard football vibes, not really elite level professionalism that the NFL tries to assert itself with now all those fancy screen graphics they put up and the stuff I heard that they're removing the yardage markers by chains and having it all digitized, like all of that stuff, trying to make them sound more sophisticated than they actually are, kind of like, I don't know, like F1 and in motor racing and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. And I yeah, and I mean even before that though, like you were still getting touchbacks out the wazoo anyways, because in the end, teams knew it was better for player safety and to pin a team at the 20-yard line or 30-yard line was better than even risking the return at that point.
Or like when they would punt, and it would land inside the 10 or inside the 5.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it negates the skill of being a good coffin corner kicker. The other one I think again, not to ramble on, but another rule I find that's really interesting in the CFL play that makes it more strategic is the safety. Because in the NFL, you got to do that one step safety punt, so you never really get a good
Yeah.
kick out of it. So teams don't intentionally take the safety. But in the CFL, because of the larger field, the taking the safety and giving up the two and then kicking off the ball normally, it incentivizes sometimes giving the safety in a game where you might be up 5 points, let's say, give up a knee, kick the ball off normally, and if the opposing team feels it from like their own 30, then they have a long way to go for a field goal. Whereas if you punt it out, the other team might get the ball at your 50 or 45-yard line where they're close to already being in field goal range, and then they have less to go to score a touchdown to win the game. So that's what I like about our elements of the game. A lot of the rules, I think, benefit the spirit of the game, but also have a good strategic element to it that really makes every decision critical, especially when it doesn't work, like we saw this week with Toronto and Winnipeg, because in both of the teams' respective 3rd-1 situations, everybody in hindsight saying, oh, well, why didn't you go for it? Well, or sorry, why didn't you just take the points? But in a lot of these circumstances, taking the risk, if you had gotten it, well, going for it and getting the first down would have probably been more beneficial in the long term. But of course, when it doesn't work, it's easy to that's the wrong decision. I'm looking up the CFL score, by the way. I have the game on in the corner. So Hamilton's to Montreal right now. So uh be a upset.
I
Right at sevens right now.
I'm gonna bring Chris Palme on from the Argo Bounce Audio Show, the co-host with Nick.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey Chris, good to have you joining us.
Yeah, don't get me started on that dynamic kickoff. The National Football League is becoming the National Flag Football League. It's
Well,
becoming too corporate, and it's not the same NFL that I grew up and loved. I'm really emotional about it, and I hope the CFL doesn't go to what the NFL is doing. So, yeah, guys, I'm just in a bit of a rant about that. And now they cancel games when it rains too. The NFL now, if it rains, they cancel the games like baseball. It's like it's not the same NFL I grew up with. By the way, Hamilton 7-7. Their fans are getting arrogant. They think they're going to win 3 games in a row because they beat a bad Edmonton team. They beat a Toronto team barely that was struggling offensively. And Montreal's doesn't have Cody for Jardel. He's not playing tonight, but they've tied it up on a touchdown. So it's 7-7. It's not a great game, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, hi,
yeah.
Robbie. How are you doing? I'm just my rant.
I I'm doing good. I like your hat, by the way.
I got it for $7 in Detroit at the Marathon gas station. $7 for this hat, and this is a premium hat.
Yeah, well, ours were free at the Argo game last week, so
We
I
should have got Robbie a hat too.
I guess I'll make this official to our viewers. Robbie, this hat will be on its way to you at some point in the next I guess we have the holiday weekend here in Canada.
Civic,
So
yeah.
it'll be on its way to you Tuesday. Hopefully you should get it by Wednesday. So we're gonna gift you that. But just going back on your point, Chris, I don't think they should call it the dynamic kickoff. They should really
That,
call it the static kickoff because everybody has to
it's
start
awful.
standing still.
It's
Yeah,
it's awful. It's awful. I watched 5 minutes of it, and I know it's preseason football, but I watched it for 5 minutes and I lost interest. And then I found out during the third quarter it started raining and they canceled the game. It's
I
like,
think to be fair, I think I don't know for sure, but I did hear that there was lightning strikes. So I think
okay,
it might legitimately be because of a thunder warning. Robbie, are you in agreement with us on the kickoff? Are you a fan of it, or are you going to wait and see how it works out first?
I mean, I'll I'll see what happens next Saturday when the Bills play Chicago and
Is that game in Buffalo or in Chicago? Do you
It
know,
was in
Robbie?
Buffalo.
yeah, that game is in Buffalo.
Yeah, and hey, by the way, Robbie, they had the red and blue practice tonight. Now, can Buffalo get as many fans for that as Philadelphia? Philadelphia had 50,000 fans for the Eagles practice. You think Buffalo can get 50,000 tonight for their blue and red practice? And did you ever go to one of those yet?
I have been to one, like I think it was the year after COVID hit.
Okay, so 2022.
How many tables have you smashed at the tailgate before the Bills games?
Um, I haven't smashed a table in.
No? What about at home?
No.
No? No?
Oh, we
No.
Hey,
had next time if I ever go for tailgate, if we ever have to drive down to BMO for the game, I've got a really beaten up table. Maybe we can use that to smash before an Argos game one of these days.
the only thing is the Toronto police will come in and arrest you for doing it. The no
I
fun
don't
police.
I don't know about that. Usually
No.
at the BMO field in the South lot,
Oh,
everybody's pretty good and respectable.
two announcements to make. I will be at the Argos game next Friday as media, working in the press box. So I don't have to sit in the stands with the riffraff. I'll be in the royal seats as media. So I'll be doing. I'm just kidding. I love the fans
The
too.
commoner.
But no, I'll be doing some player interviews and I'll be on the field, Robbie, and maybe you'll see me on CBS Sports Line on the field. But I'll be doing media work. And another announcement, Robbie, the next Argo Bounce live audio show won't be on Wednesday. We moved it to Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and we have a special guest, Matthew Shinetti from TSN. He's the CFL on TSN sideline reporter. He's like Tracy Wolfson is for CBS. You know who she is on CBS for the NFL games. Matthew does a great job for the CFL, and we're going to talk to him about his soccer experience. He was doing some soccer coverage for TSN, and he's going to come on and talk about the Cats Alouettes game and returning to the CFL. And I think Nick will have some questions for Matthew Shinetti too. 7 o'clock
Oh yeah.
Tuesday. Don't miss it.
When do the Argos play?
So
Nick?
yeah, so they play their next game is this Sunday. I believe it's going to be on NBC Sports for you guys. They play the Sunday game at 7 o'clock Eastern. It's the closing game of the week in Calgary against the Stampeders, and then week 10 they're going to be the Friday night game at home at 7:30. Again hosting Calgary, so they're doing a little bit of a home and home over the next 2 weeks. And then after that, they have their second bye week. And then it's on the 22nd of August, the Thursday. It's the Canadian National Exhibition game where during the big carnival that they have at the CNE, they play a home game then against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And that game's always a really special one because your tickets to the football game get you into the CNE for free. So you already save probably around 10, $15 an adult ticket. And you get full access to the CNE events, the carnival. You can go to the food building and pig out like my brother and I always do on some really wacky food options. You can go ride the rides. You can go play the carnival games. You can win one of those giant stuffed toys that are bigger than your bedroom. You can and do all that kind of stuff, and then you also get to go in and watch the big game in the evening. And Saskatchewan's always a crowd, a fan base that travels well. And the last 2 years they've played in the Touchdown Atlantic game where they've played out in Halifax and not Wolfville. Nova Scotia the year before. So it's exciting that they're going to be back to play in Toronto proper for a home game this year.
In the CFL, they have 2 bye weeks where, like in the NFL, they have 1 bye week.
I think the CFL has 3 bye weeks, right, Nick? Is it 2 or
Um,
3?
Yeah, it's because of the way the scheduling is. So we only have 9 teams, so it kind of lends itself that every team gets a bye, and over the season it ends up becoming a 21-week season where teams play 18 games, but they get 3 bye weeks to
Bye
it.
weeks.
Sorry, what was the follow up part of your question, Robbie, regarding that?
And like in the NFL, each team gets 1 bye week, and there's a 18 game schedule.
17 still. They haven't gone to 18 yet. The NFL is still 17 games. 3 preseason and 17 regular season games.
Yeah,
CFL has 2 preseason and 18 games. Do you know what year the CFL went to an 18 game schedule, Robbie? Guess a year. Just any year.
2019.
Nope, that would be 1986 when I was 14 years old going into high school. 1986, the CFL went to an 18 game schedule.
to be fair, it was a good guess because after the COVID year of we lost the 2020 season, 2021 they did have a shortened season because of all the regulations lifting and through all that. So we did have a shortened season that year. But yeah, we've had a full 18, well, 21 weeks, 18 games played season for quite a long time. So it helps our season last from June all the way to November. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, here in Canada, we don't just get the CFL. We get our college football, the U.S. college football, and the NFL. So if you're a true football fan, you get 9.5, 10 months of the year. If you're just an NFL fan, you only get 6 months. So I just think if you there's no reason why you can't like the CFL, the NFL. You know what I mean? It's just I don't know why people have to pick. You don't need to choose. And the thing is, both games are unique, except I really, really don't like this dynamic kickoff rule. This is probably the stupidest thing the National Football League has done in my lifetime. And I'm hoping somebody in their head offices, I'm being honest, reevaluates this. I don't know one single person, Robbie or Nick, that likes what they're doing. And that's all I have to say about that subject. I know I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I'll be cheering for them, but I don't think I'll be watching the kickoffs this year the way they're set up. So we'll leave it at that. Hopefully, the NFL will come to their senses and remove that silly rule as well. And hey, Robbie, I will be back up in your area in a couple weeks to cover the Bisons, just to give you a heads up.
How are the Bisons doing so far?
They are struggling. They were doing well until their top team, the Toronto Blue Jays, decided to take their 7 best players, and the Blue Jays have had an awful year. The Bisons were doing good, but unfortunately, they lost their top 7 players, so they've been struggling. So the Bisons definitely will not be in minor league baseball playoffs this year, so they'll just be finishing up the season. But there's still some good players down there, but the majority of their star players are in Toronto. And you know what? To be honest, they should be in Toronto. Their 7 best players: Addison Barger, Spencer Horwitz, a couple other guys are up there. I'm trying to remember, but they're up there and they deserve to be up there. And Casey Candell has done a good job. So the Bisons, their job is to develop players for the Blue Jays. They want to win too, but minor league baseball is sort of like the Ontario Hockey League. You want to win, but you also want to develop players, and it's hard to do both at that level. But they're still going to have a good team. Like they're still going to be competitive. And Casey Candell is a tremendous manager. And as far as I'm concerned, Nick, Casey Candell could be a Major League Baseball manager or a manager of the Blue Jays because he knows how to relate to players and he knows how to get the best out of them. He's really good at developing young players. And the Bisons still have another 2 months left of the season, so there's still plenty of time to get down there, and you can get tickets at bisons.com.
Yeah, well, I can't speak a whole lot about baseball at the Bisons. My mom's a bit of a Jays fan, but
My
um,
condolences.
yeah, watching the struggles right now. Maybe I'll have to take her out to see the Bisons play one of these days. But like with
You'd
my
love
work
it.
schedule,
You'd love it.
yeah,
You'd love it. It's a beautiful ballpark. You'd love it, Nick. You and your mom would have a good time, and it's affordable at entertainment. You
I'll
can get a ticket behind home plate for $21.
I'll plug your name in and get that VIP area like you took your mom to with all the air condition and the fancy buffet and all that kind of stuff. Have to do that.
I have
Um,
her name's Kaylee. Kaylee's their food and beverage manager. So you
nice.
just got to give me heads up, and I'll let Kaylee know.
Yeah, maybe we'll bring Robbie. You'll join us, and three of us can hang out there in the VIP section one of these days.
I prefer the media press box. Robbie, you
Hey,
got another question for Nick and me?
Um, like, how did you talk to Howard Simon on your show?
Oh, Howard's been on my show 5 times now. He's been
wow.
on my show. Pat Gregor from TSN 9 times, Aaron Sanders from the Windsor Express 7 times, Howard Simon 5 times. I reached out to Howard a couple years ago when I first started, and he said, sure, no problem. And he liked my work, he liked my personality, and Howard likes coming on my show. And Howard's one of I do consider Howard a friend, and he's now a Buffalo Broadcasting Hall of Famer. He's going to be in their class of 2024 in this September in Williamsville. So yeah, Howard and Sal Capaccio have been great. And I've even had Chris the Bulldog Parker on my show. But when he came on my show, he was drinking beer at his home. So it was kind of it was a good show. But Bulldog's been on my show, and Sal and Howard's a real good guy. Howard loves the Bisons. He loves the New York Mets, and he loves his Bills and Sabres, but he knows the Mets are going to let him down. And I told Howard the New York Mets remind me of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They spend money, they give their fans hope, but they let them down every year. But
Yeah, the
yeah,
Mets and letting people down are pretty synonymous. So don't feel
just
bad, Chris.
just like that team in the still town, Hamilton, the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Oh man, don't show dicks at them tonight. They're gonna find they might find some way to win tonight against Montreal. They're still tied at sevens at halftime, I believe. So, speaking, if we go back a little bit to the CFL real quickly, when we're talking a little bit about cross Argonauts and Bills, like we kind of have been through this show. One guy I think you're gonna love, Robbie, who has come to Buffalo this year as the director of scouting, is Vince Magri, who came from the Toronto Argonauts. He was one of the guys who built this team to what it is now. And in 2019, they were kind of in the dregs in the basement of the league, and kind of they had a pretty abysmal season the year before. It was Vince Magri along with John Murphy who worked together to really build up the players that they have now, that won them a Grey Cup in 2022, led them to the 16-2 season in 23, and are still in a pretty good position right now, despite everything going on in 2024. So I don't know necessarily his impact on this past year's draft, where I know there's been a little bit of criticism over the picks that they made last year, but I think this year, kind of moving forward, you have a really good scout leading your scouting team in the Buffalo Bills, and I think for him, he's going to really want to prove himself and put the Bills in good footing with Josh Allen in his prime to make them a top NFL team and get them over that nasty Patrick Mahomes and the evil empire and the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you got someone to lead you that way, he's going to be a good guy to have for you.
By the way, Robbie, August 8th, 1961 was the last time a CFL team played an NFL team in an exhibition game. And on that day in August 8th, 1961, your Buffalo Bills in the American Football League, they weren't in the NFL back then. They took on the Hamilton Tiger Cats and a CFL team. The Tiger Cats beat them. So back in the late 50s and early 60s, the CFL and the NFL were pretty well on par. This is before Nick's time and my time. And they used to have exhibition games, and the CFL teams actually beat some of the NFL teams. But you'll never see that happen again. And I just love the history too, by the way. So, and Nick's a history guy of the CFL. I'm a history guy of all sports. By the way, Robbie, how much do you know about curling, the sport of curling?
All I know is it's a like a disc with a handle on it, and they push it towards the target.
Nick right here is Mr. Curling. So if you want to know about the sport of curling, Nick is the guy to talk to, okay?
Yeah, I don't show up with all my Argonauts memorabilia here, but I actually work for as the warehousing team lead for the largest curling company in the country, Goldline Curling. Shout out to Andrew, Aaron, and Pete, and everybody, Brad, and everybody else there. Yeah, we have a pretty great group of individuals here that are obsessed with the sport of curling. We not only do we provide all that equipment, the brushes that they use to sweep in front of the rocks as they glide down the ice, and the shoes and all that stuff, but we also have the contract where we do all the merchandising for Curling Canada. So all the jerseys that the players wear on TV at the big national events, the Brier, the Scotties, and the World events, and all the merchandise that fans buy, the T-shirts and hats and all that. That's all through us. So we have a pretty big responsibility with the curling industry, and um, it ends up being a pretty substantial market, and curlers are very passionate and very loyal. So we're very lucky to have a really great group of teams that we sponsor and of fans. So just very similar to CFL fans in that sense that sometimes things might not be perfect, but they always loyal to their team and their brand. So the curlers are a lot like that.
An update for Robbie: the Toronto Blue Jays, a bad baseball team, 3, Yankees 2, and CFL halftime, Montreal 10, Hamilton 7 at halftime.
Um,
And
I
Kansas
got
City's beating my Tigers 9-2. The Tigers are a write off.
um I got one question for both of you. Um, what made you go into media?
For me, I decided after my other career, I was getting tired of it. It became like a work divorce, and I got a taste of doing camera work. Camera work led to my podcast, which led to my radio show, which led to my media work, and I love doing this. I love talking to coaches and players. I'll doing media stuff, writing game night stories, seeing stuff the fans don't do. And that's why Nick and I, our show does well, is getting better. Nick is the younger Argonaut generation fan and a historian. I'm an older generation Argonaut fan, and I have the older perspective and the media perspective, and Nick has the younger side of it. And I think we both have a lot to contribute. We don't always agree on our shows, but we have our points. We have our points. Nick makes his points, I make our points, and that's what makes a good podcast. When you have a co-host, you're not always going to agree with them, but you have to respect each other's opinions. And that's why I think our show's getting better and better, because we both love the CFL, we love the Argonauts, and we have different perspectives. And we're not always going to agree on it, but it makes for good conversation and getting guests too. I love getting guests because every time a guest comes on, Robbie, on our show or my show, I learned something, and it's called storytelling. And I'm sure that's why you like doing your show, Robbie. You like talking to guests, you like the storytelling aspect, and you like meeting people because you met me and Nick through here.
And I'm looking forward to meeting you, Chris, in person when you come up to Buffalo.
Yeah, one of these days, yeah, for sure. And Nick, if you want final thoughts.
Yeah, for me, I mean, for me, this is just a different way of expressing my interests and a method of having a voice out to contribute my opinions. I've been really fortunate that through my time at university, I've had a lot of different experiences, challenging, some easy, others, and learning how to engage and communicate with people from many different backgrounds. And my resulting 2 degrees that I have, my bachelor's and my MA in history that I've got there, and plus my love of reading and going through archives and that sort of thing. It's been a way of me to uncover for me to uncover stories of the Toronto Argonauts in their past, and it's always cool when I surprise some of our guests, guys like Don Landry or Marty York we've had on, where I bring up guys like Joe Kroll and Dick Shadow who haven't played since before they were kids, and they bring up stories of them and whatever. So I find what if you don't tell those stories, they become lost to history. And what history is about fundamentally is it's not just about the past of what actually happened, but our interpretations of it and the memories that are made from it. And if there aren't people like myself, like Dr. James Fraser or the University of Guelph, who really encapsulates and does the hard work to get these stories recorded. Guys like Paul Woods, who have recorded memories of events going on just recently, like McLeod Bethel Thompson's story. Those kind of things, they do become lost to history. So it's been really fun to be able to engage with other individuals and reminisce on it, and just as a way of expressing my own interests. And then in terms of personal skills, it's it's given me more confidence to speak in front of a webcam and a microphone on TV. I used to feel like I stuttered a lot and having just stage fright, for better or worse. But now it's you almost forget that the microphone's on and you just act more natural than as you would normally interacting with someone over a cup of coffee or something.
Hey, Nick, you've come a long ways in the last year and a half.
Ah, thanks, buddy. Same to you.
No, seriously, the more you do something, the more Robbie, the more you do this, the more comfortable you get. And Mike and Nick says you just forget about the microphone and camera and just focus on your guest and having good conversation. And it's okay to write points and notes down, but natural conversation is much better than having stuff all scripted for you because people don't want to watch that scripted stuff. People want to see real conversations.
Yeah, I hear I've learned a lot on my commutes in and from work. You like here in Toronto, we have Overdrive, TSN 1050, and First Up, which are kind of two of the big ones on your morning commute, and the talk show hosts there. They're constantly just bantering and joking with their audience, the guests that they have on. They play these kind of funny games like, are you like, if you're in this guy's shoes, are you yes to this scenario of, like, for instance, the Blue Jays at the trade deadline? Are you yes for what they've done? Are you no for what they've done? Or kind of stuff like that. And you bring up, like, if you know the guy golfs a lot, you bring up their golf game recently and stuff like that. So that's what I've noticed has made a much more engaging show with your guests. You treat it more just like a casual conversation rather than just direct sort of question and answer back and forth. It makes it much more engaging. I think we got a little off topic here.
That's okay. Hey, Robbie, you're at 54 minutes. Is this your longest podcast yet? 54 minutes? Is this your longest show yet?
No,
No, what's your longest show? Mine's 2 hours and 9 minutes.
mine is like
That was
57 or something.
okay. Well, let's break the 57 and
well,
go to 58 minutes.
well,
4 more minutes.
I'm not gonna feel bad when you tell me our Argo Bounce show is only supposed to be half an hour, and I pull us over for an hour and 10. So
That's okay. At WQE, they aired their show again last night, so they're quite happy with the CFL content, and I'm glad Robbie is likes the CFL and the league. Hey, thank you for becoming a fan of the league and for watching the games, and tell your family and friends check out the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, I was at my grandparents' like, and there was a game on, and then like watching the Argonauts. It it seems like that they're a good team to pull for.
And you know what, Nick and me, and why people like the league is the players. It's a fan friendly league.
Absolutely.
The fans can talk to the players and coaches, and it's just these guys don't make a ton of money compared to the NFL players, but a lot of them are very talented and could play in the NFL. But this whole perception is, oh, you guys aren't making 2 million, 3, 10 million, 20 million. You're no good, and that's wrong. And the thing is football, and a lot of Americans that come up here, I talk to them and they tell me how much they love the CFL, and people in the states need to start watching it more because the CFL is not a fly by night league like the UFXL or whatever it's called. The CFL has been around since 58, and before that it was Canadian football. And originally, the CFL started out as a rugby league. The Grey Cup originally was a trophy that was given to the rugby champion of Canada, and Nick can confirm that too.
Yeah, there was actually at one point two different rugby leagues just in Ontario. And then yeah, since then it's merged into what has become the CFL since I think 57. So yeah, it's gone a long way since then. And I mean, speaking of fans, I mean, pulling for Toronto is great because like Toronto often gets criticism as being one of the lowest total fan bases in the league, and of course, us Torontonians can defend it by the fact that you're not competing with a MLB team, an NBA team, an NHL team. Like we're the only major city in Canada that has all three, excluding the NFL. But kind of just building off that though, with
You
the
forgot
C
about the Toronto FC, Major League
yeah, and the
Soccer.
FC now. Well, yeah, I yeah, they're still kind of below the other four, but anyways, um, what if you go to practice? What I always find is amazing is that gates are flung open. You just walk in. You can stand there as the players walk in, shake their hands. If you really want, win a McManus autograph or Jared Brinkman's to do a selfie with them, like they'll be more than happy to stand in there and do a photo. Like, and especially because with the ratio, like Jack Cassar, the other middle linebacker, who's going to be probably starting for Winnie McManus, a middle linebacker this week with his injury. Like I've known him since high school, and there's guys who are on the Golden Hawks like Curly Giddens, who was in Toronto and now is in Edmonton. I watched him play at Laurier multiple times, and we're this pretty much the same age, so it's like it's pretty wild to in my time right now going through this to experience those feelings with players who kind of look at you as like friends or family more than just as like some sort of arrogant like who are you, I don't care who you are, leave me alone. Like you don't get that in the CFL. And then you get the really crazy guys like John God who will go and recover a fumble and return for a touchdown, then run to the stands and chug a beer, which they're not supposed to do anymore, but they always find a way to do it, which is awesome.
Hey Nick, before we wrap this up with Robbie, uh, everybody was writing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers off. They destroyed the BC Lions 25-0 last night, and Winnipeg's defense is very good, and their offense was able to get some points. BC looked real bad, and I guess Vernon Adams Jr. is now going to be out a while, so I think there's some concerns in BC. Winnipeg's now 3-6. I do think Winnipeg can get to. I still think Winnipeg's a playoff team. I don't know where they're
Uh,
going to finish, but I still think they're too good of an organization not to be in the playoffs.
I still am not giving Winnipeg the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, defensively they shut down Vernon Adams. To At this point now, you kind of wonder how much, because of the knee injury, how much that might have factored into his subpar play in the other three
That was
quarters.
awful. That was
Yeah,
awful.
but on the flip side, I still don't think Winnipeg was turning it up that well offensively.
But their defense, but,
Six of their drives ended in field goals, not touchdowns,
but
and
their defense
they
is their
turned it
de-
over. They turned it over on another third down conversion. Strevler failed to convert.
but their
So while
defense is
has
their
been
defense
good,
their defense has given up 16 points in 2 games. And how often do you see a CFL team get shut out? Seriously, Nick.
well,
With the rules in the CFL, it's almost impossible to get shut out in a CFL game.
but one of those is against the Toronto team that has struggled the last 3 weeks. So it
But
like
Winnipeg beat
including
themselves in that game. Winnipeg beat themselves. If Winnipeg does not turn the ball over 5 times, I think they win that game. I'm just saying, Mike O'Shea is one of the best coaches in the CFL. These guys know how to win. I'm not saying they're going to win 16 games or 15. I still think Winnipeg's going to win enough games to make the playoffs because I think Edmonton will not make the playoffs. It's just a matter of another team that'll be out, and we'll see what happens. But
well, let's put Robbie back in control of his own
yes,
show again.
Robbie. Sorry about that. Me and Nick like the rant, but Nick, hey, Robbie, I want to say thank you for having me on, and I'm sure Nick feels the same way.
Yeah, is there anything else you would like to talk to us about before we get too deep into another argument?
Um, I just want to say, like, um, go Bills, go Argonauts, and
Boo Detroit Lions.
No, go
no,
Detroit. Go Detroit sports. No, no,
and
no.
and you're an Eagles fan too, right?
Yep. Fly Eagles fly.
Oh, we might see some fireworks between you two at a Eagles Bills game.
They don't
Cl-
play each other for another 5 years. They only play the Bills once every 5 years.
well, careful. The Bills might clip their wings before the game. We'll see.
Thank you, Robbie. Hey, I think you're getting so much better, Robbie. And if you keep doing this, you'll do better. But like I said, me and Nick were glad to come on here again tonight, Robbie. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks a lot for having us. We really appreciate it. And anytime we get to talk, I know I like to talk Argonauts football, and I know Chris likes to talk about just about anything. So we really appreciate you having on and having us on. And yeah, if there's any other time you want to talk, maybe if we get closer to the CFL playoffs in October, November, and um, as the Bills kind of get their season underway, we can maybe talk again more about that.
And tell you what, Robbie, before I go to bed tonight, I'll make 1 or 2 clips up of our show of maybe me and Nick going at it. Okay, I'll do 1 or 2 reels.
Oh yeah, that'll be cool. Um, and
And we set a
I like
record.
how you
Go ahead,
I
Nick.
like how you do your um reels, like how you cut your videos and
It's
I
time consuming, but I learned how to do it during Christmas last year, and it takes a little practice. And the more you do of it, it's now easy, and I enjoy doing it. But it just takes a little bit of time to do it. But it's something you have to do when you want to go into radio and media. So and it promotes your guest and your show. And then people, you know this, Nick, and you know this, Robbie. Today's society, everyone's got a short attention span, so sometimes they don't have an hour to watch a show, so they only have like 30 seconds or a minute and they can get snippets. That's all it is. It's little pieces of a show.
Yeah, the snippet this week's going to be over that fumble that the Alouettes had there late in the first quarter. I think that's gonna. So we need our own version of that on our show to draw attention. So that's exactly what that'll do. So
And I did say hi to Howard Simon for you yesterday too, by the way.
yeah, I saw that cuz you popped up my comment to him and uh cuz go Bills, go New York sports.
And we set a
Two.
record, hour and 5 minutes. Hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, Robbie, I'm going to get going because I've done 4 shows this week, and I need to go for a walk because I've been sitting on my laptop for a number of hours. But I was glad to come on and talk with you guys for a half an hour. And thank you for having me on,
Yeah.
and thank you for having Nick on. And
Yeah.
we appreciate you watching our show and enjoying the CFL.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, and go Argonauts.
Go Argos.
Go Argos. Have a good night, Robbie, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
You
Nick?
too.
Talk to you
Yeah.
later. All right.
Thanks,
See you,
Chris.
Robbie. Okay. Thanks, Robbie.
See ya.
See ya.